And if you thought that I wasn't going to comment and do the review on Amazing Disgrace about the lies and false image of Jesse Lee Peterson and not do it on the 54th annual NYC Pride Parade that's going on right now, oh, you've been very much mistaken, because I think this is a perfect day to do this review. To all the hypocrites out there that condemn homosexuals, but not only live the lifestyle, but actually condemn it, oh, this is dedicated to you all, and particularly Jesse Lee Peterson. I shall begin the honors. And hello everyone. It's your girl, Miss Analytical, and I am coming to you on this beautiful Sunday afternoon. And before I begin, I want to thank everyone that has listened to my content, downloaded it, subscribed to my channel, shared my videos the past week. I want to say thank you. We are now at 2.96K subs. We are on to the road of 3,000 subs. And also, not to mention, my channel has been officially monetized. And so I'm finally earning money on my channel. And I want to take this time out to thank everyone over the past 6 months that have viewed my upload about Jesse Lee Peterson's homosexual activities being exposed and him being exposed as a fraud. For years, people have questioned Jesse Lee Peterson's authenticity about if he was really sincere about who he was as a church leader, as a mentor, as a servant of the Lord, as a Christian, and also as being a heterosexual man. And come to find out that it was all a lie. Now, I not only did that expose commentary in December of last year, but I also received both praise and condemnation, particularly from his followers, his cult-minded followers. I want to really take the time out to mention Fabian Asensio, because he was a person who really, really spoke out and really revealed a lot of stuff. Also, there's another person that I want to mention named Martin Francis, because he was the one that was protested and posted that video online. And also, I am going to be doing this review today, which is about the documentary called Amazing Disgrace, about the lies and the truth about Jesse Lee Peterson and his homo-predatory behavior that he has committed towards men for over 20 years. In parentheses, allegedly. I have to say that because of legalities, because I'm not trying to get my channel shut down for this. I'm just going to be honest. I've really, really put a lot into this, and I've come a long way. And I'm not going to stress out over this anymore. Not the channel, not this commentary, but the channel itself. So this is my official review. So I took a lot of notes. I took about 7 notes in regards to this 26-minute documentary. So I'm going to begin it right now. So the documentary was produced by church militants. It's a Catholic channel on YouTube, and his name is Joseph Enders. He produced this documentary, and he was a person that was speaking on a documentary and interviewed the purported victims of Jesse Lee Peterson. And it's a Catholic website, and I'm going to go into some of the backstory about this in a compare and contrast of Jesse Lee Peterson and another predator who was a member of Catholic Church. So the documentary opens up with the 1990s, and it talks about how in the 1990s, Jesse Lee Peterson was a student of a man named Roy Masters. And Roy Masters was a British-born hypnosis, and he basically was basically a leader of this movement in the 1980s. So pretty much in the mid-1980s, although the documentary talks about the 90s for some reason, how it opens up, Jesse Lee Peterson becomes a staunch follower of Roy Masters' teaching. So he even pretty much has him on his show, and he's talking about not just hypnosis, but basically creating this church and having the followers reject the concept of the Holy Spirit and our blessed Lord and Savior's divinity. So pretty much this is a very important point, because this is how a lot of the paleoconservatives believe. A lot of paleoconservatives who are non-Catholic, they believe that the Holy Trinity does not exist. They take out the Holy Spirit. They don't believe in it at all. And they basically do not believe in the divinity of Jesus Christ. This is very important. They believe that when a person passes away, they believe that they're just in the ground, just like muerto, They don't believe that the soul basically lives on. That's very important, because a lot of these people play a role in our politics with just what you've seen this past week. So anyway, Jesse is basically criticized by this. He even went on Church Militant, and the man questioned him, you don't believe that Jesus rose in the body? You believe he rose in the spirit? He was like, I don't really know, but he rose in the spirit. That's how, because Jesse talked real slow. And he was like, no, he rose in the body, meaning that on the third day he rose from the dead, and he basically rose naturally as whole in his body. His body was not laying down on the ground, and his spirit rose. He himself rose. That's why that's why it's called Resurrection Sunday, Jesse. But hey, that's a whole nother argument to talk about. So we enter the story of Jesse's alleged predatory behavior with reported victim number one. His name is Patrick Rooney. So Patrick Rooney basically is a person that worked in a public access TV show that he started out in LA. And he was married to a black woman, and the person who officiated the wedding was Jesse Lee Peterson. And not only did he officiate the wedding, he also baptized Patrick Rooney as well. So what happens is that the whole purpose of the show and how they met was through Rooney's public access channel in LA. And his show was focusing about helping people get off of drugs, particularly heroin. And Jesse was one of his first guests, along with another Bond member. And when they finished the interview with Jesse asks him backstage if he was gay. And at first he was kind of startled, but then Rooney says, I once, had like homosexual tendencies myself. So I was sort of taken aback. So what ends up happening is that he doesn't admit that he was gay, but he does admit that he was interested in homosexual, activities. So what happens is Jesse starts preying on him, allegedly, and he pretty much, starts to use these predatory tactics, asking him if he was gay. And why I mention a Catholic priest is because Imran, the producer, mentions a priest from Saginaw, Michigan, named Father Robert DeLand. And what happened in 2017, he was on trial for basically doing the same predatory behavior, but to a teenager, a minor. And so he asked that minor, hey, are you gay? And he was basically stunned. And he said, to discover you having gay tendencies, and this is what he said, to discover you having gay tendencies is a fine thing because then you don't have to be so confused. So he was comparing and contrasting the whole situation, saying that this is what predators do. Basically saying that Jesse's behavior is that of a sexual abuser, a molester. So what happens is they start having this sexual relationship, and he starts, hinting it more and more. First, they do horseplay, and he feels Jesse privates against him. And what ends up happening is that they end up going to this moral reconstruction conference in 2005 with Jesse in DC. However, they stay at a hotel in the Virginia area of DC, and Jesse goes into the room with him and sits on the bed. And he asks him insistently, what do you want to do? So Rooney is scared at first, but then he basically is like, you want to do sex acts? So then Jesse's like, okay. So then what ends up happening is that Jesse immediately rips off all his clothes, and then Rooney rips off all his clothes, and then they get it on, and meaning bump, 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 so to speak. Now, I'm going to say this. That was consensual on Rooney's part. You can't call that abuse, and you can't call that molestation, because he was willing to do that. Now, you could say that Jesse preyed on him, but he submitted into the predatory activity that Jesse was doing. So at least Rooney was being honest about his past, and he was being honest about it at the point I would give him that. But the thing is that he said something interesting, but he said once the act was done, Jesse told him he was born again because they had homosexual sex. So what happens is that this sodomitic relationship lasts for a decade. And what happens is in 2015, Rooney is like, I don't want to do this no more. 2016, he's like, I don't want to do this no more at all. So the first thing Rooney does, he admits it to his son. He was like, son, I did a bad thing. I had sex with Jesse Lee Peterson, and I had a sexual relationship with him for over a decade. So the son is disappointed in him because he's like, how could you do this? Like, how could you do this to the family? So what happens is he basically tells Jesse that it's over. I want to end it. And Jesse gets upset. But what happens to prove Jesse's character as a person, according to the documentary, the son asks Jesse, is it true that you and my father were having a gay relationship? Because my father just confessed. So Jesse said, no, that's a lie. I would never do anything like that. And the son looked up to Jesse. And Rooney said, you were lying. Because I just told my son what we did. So then finally Jesse said, yeah, it happened. So what ends up happening is that Rooney and his wife and his son, they moved to Florida. And when Jesse finds out they moved to Florida, Jesse has practically almost a nervous breakdown. He can't take it. And Jesse bribes him to return by offering money. He does this like several times. And then, he finally realizes that he's never going to come back. Like, he's moved from California to Florida, cross country. He's never coming back. And he can't handle the ending of this relationship, but Jesse has to move on. So what occurs is that in the middle of this documentary, Joseph Enders admits that Jesse was doing something that is a strategy of predators, which is they bully and silence all victims when they start speaking up. And they start to basically, cause you to lose all credibility. It's like they don't want you to have any credibility of having to tell the truth about what happened. So what Jesse tends to do is he discredits anyone that speak out against his behavior, and he has bond members or people that work on his show, like the Jesse Lee Peterson show, or, the Fallen State. He has them to pretty much discredit them, and if they call the shows to speak, they're blocked. So what Jesse does with his predatory behavior, and this is allegedly, I have to say allegedly, he seeks out bond members. Bond seems like it's a front to seek out troubled young men who have a troubled past, whether it's recidivism, they just got out of prison, or they're falling on hard times. But the majority of them are users of substances, narcotics, and they're young. Now, going back to the priest, Father Robert DeLand, he is convicted in 2017, and he serves 2 to 5 years in prison. So this is a person whose behavior Jesse Lee Peterson mirrors, according to the documentary. So what happens is that Rooney isn't finished yet with telling the truth about Jesse Lee Peterson. In 2020, he creates a blog post speaking out and revealing Jesse's predation, which is his predatory behavior. And in a shocking disclosure, he discovers that Jesse was committing the same predatory behavior towards him that he did towards a 30-year-old man named Samuel Arambula, which is exactly what he did to him. So he finds out that a 30-year-old is being victimized the same way he was. And this is where we meet purported victim number 2, Samuel Arambula. So Samuel Arambula pretty much discovers Bond and Jesse Lee Peterson during the lockdown of CVID. That's what I'm going to say. We're going to call it CVID. And he's interested in really going to the church. But what happens is he can't go because of the lockdown. And he's really, I really can't take being in the house. I just got to deal with my issues. And the issue he has is he was abused as a child. And he says that Jesse helped him to forgive his family for the sexual abuse that he endured as a child. So in May of 2020, he finally gets to go to a Bond event in person. And what Jesse does is at every Bond event, he approaches new members who are there for the first time, and he asks them to introduce himself and tell them who they are. So Samuel does that. And what happens is he develops first a professional relationship with Jesse. And he starts out washing cars and helping out at the Bond house, where several male staff live. And this is where we get to the grooming that happens. So Samuel confides in Jesse for his guidance in dealing with his sexual abuse that occurred to him as a child. And he thinks Jesse is a good person. And he thinks that Jesse is going to, help him and counsel him so much. And Jesse does tell him, as I said previously, you got to forgive your parents for what happened. You can't just hold on to it and harbor it. So he does that, of course. But then what happens, as time goes on, Jesse takes advantage of him and the relationship progresses to more physical. And he tells him he loves him. He starts hugging him real tight and saying, I love you, man. And Samuel is kind of like a little uncomfortable of it because of what happened to him. But then he's like, man, I love you too. And then what happens is that a Friday afternoon into the evening, he goes to his house. And he goes to his house to chill out and relax. It's Friday. And I guess the pandemic is still going on somewhat. And, it's Friday. It probably was payday. Let me relax and chill and go over to the Bond house. So Jesse hugs him for a long time. But then he kneels down in front of him, wraps his hand around his waist, and then rubs his thighs. And Arambola is pretty much questioning, like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And then he's telling, like, relax, I love you. And then he rubs his private areas, and then he pulls down his pants. Now, Arambola is not feeling this at all, but because this happened to him as a child, he's pretty much, stuck in a stoic position. He's taken aback. And I guess because he cares about Jesse as a person, looks up to him as a religious figure, he's like, I don't really want to, turn this into making him an enemy. So Jesse instructs him to go into this meditation. And the meditation is called the silent prayer. And the silent prayer, this is what is said. Doubt all thoughts. Everything Satan is telling you is a lie. Meaning, and to paraphrase it, give in to what's going on. Don't think what I'm doing to you is evil, pretty much. So Arambola says he knows it's not good, and he rejects it. So he's stoic in the chair, and Jesse gets up and he starts like talking to himself, but then he gets down on his knees again, and then he rubs him again, and then he does this repeatedly, up to 3 or 4 times, and then he stops. So what ends up happening is that Arambola, he realizes that this man is a predator, and they don't really go into it, but it seems as though Arambola stops attending bond altogether. So he pretty much, moves on his life. And then we are introduced to, in quotations, victim number 3, Trayvon Chapman. But Trayvon Chapman, we don't really know much about his backstory because Trayvon Chapman isn't speaking. I'm going to get to why in a moment. But Trayvon Chapman tells his friend, Armin Artikian, who is purported victim number 3, he tells him that, Jesse basically, forced himself on me sexually. And he sexually abused me. And Armin Artikian doesn't believe it. And I think Armin Artikian is an Armenian because of the last name. And 2, they're in California, LA. And Armenians are known for being in California going back to the 1920s. So I believe he's Armenian American. So what happens is Trayvon says, he basically not only say'd me, but he named the acts. And pretty much Armin is like, wait a minute. He's telling the truth because it happened to me when I was in my late teens. So Armin Artikian, basically back in the day, well, let me go a little bit back. Let me go forward. Back in the day, Armin Artikian said that he was talking with Jesse in a private room. And Jesse all of a sudden said, I want to see your private parts. And he basically was like, what? So Jesse pulled down Artikian's pants. And he was a shy person. And so he was like, Jesse. Even though he was shy, he was like, Jesse, you got to stop this. He was like, why? He was like, because I don't want people thinking I'm gay. So the minute he says it, he basically stops. And he just, tells him, all right, forget about it. So going to present day, when this is told to him around about 2013, 14, he approaches Jesse about Trayvon Chapman, accusing him of sexually abusing him. And Jesse says, why you believe in him? You shouldn't believe him. He's on drugs. He takes drugs. You can't believe him. So that's when he's like, it came back to him. It happened to him. So Trayvon Chapman disappeared. He disappeared. Nobody knows what happened to him, but they believe that he's still somewhere in the Los Angeles area. So now we get to a man named Robert Santer. Robert Santer is the former bond house manager. And allegedly, he witnessed strange behavior in 2021. And he witnessed it by a man named James Hake. Now, you might know who James Hake is if you watch the Jesse Lee Peterson show on YouTube. He co-signs all the racist stuff, and he even says the racist things as well. And what happens is Santer sees Jesse rubbing shoulders, kissing him on the cheek, as in James Hake, and hugging him for long periods of time at the barn house. And then he sees something when he goes to the laundry room. He sees Jesse's door open, and James is wrapped around in a burrito, and pretty much Jesse is kissing him on the forehead and pretty much, hugging him and so forth. Now, James Hake is one of the people who's a gatekeeper for Jesse, according to the documentary, because anyone who speaks out against him in the homo predatory behavior, Hake ostracizes all the men. So he is the one that's probably screening the calls and saying, you can't talk about Jesse. You can't talk about Jesse. I'm not going to let you talk about him, because then his truth will come out. And if you look at his laptop, he has the Confederate flag stick on his laptop. Because I'm going to get to all that in the end of this. So what happens is, one day, Jesse basically comes home from work and he tried to groom him. Jesse basically is hard underneath his pants, and he puts his hands underneath his pants and he massages himself to get hard. And Santer is like, what are you doing? And he's like, oh, I'm just, looking at you, whatever. So Santer's like, I'm not interested in you like that. So Jesse smirks and he walks away. And now we get to Martin Francis, purported victim number 4. Martin Francis is the person that I saw in a video that I did a commentary about in December 2021, where he was protesting in front of the Bond House. So how he meets Jesse Lee Peterson is basically in 1996. They become friends and they attend a Proposition 187 rally, which was California's proposal to stop the flooding of illegals entering the state of California, or entering the country through the state of California. So he looked very different. And I'm going to post the video of the documentary on my channel, and you're going to see that he was practically bludgeoned, sort of, in the forehead twice. And those marks are still there. He took bullets. Well, not bullets, but he took those hits, you could kind of say, for Jesse and his beliefs. And so he describes himself as Jesse's best friend. And in this video, a Spanish reporter asked him if he's racist, and he's like, no. And you can see the blood pouring down his face. It's just really bad. So about a year ago, he learns about Jesse's homo predatory behavior and how he decided, instead of being quiet, he's going to protest in front of the Bond House about what he's done. And those videos are there. I'm going to see if they're still up though. So he confronted Jesse several times, even this year, at the post office, because the post office is across the street from the Bond place. And that's where, I believe, it's next to the studio where he films The Fallen State. So he tells him, why don't you admit about what you've done? So Jesse says, tell them about you sleeping with your brother's wife. And so he says, yeah, I admit that it happened, but why don't you admit and speak out on your homosexual behavior? So what happens is that Martin Francis admits that the clues were there already and he should have recognized it, because years ago, he was trying to prey on him to see if he was interested in homosexual activity. And he basically will hug him for long periods of time. And he was telling him, look, man, I don't want these long hugs. I'm an angry man. I don't like these hugs, just leave me alone. And Jesse even tried to lift him on his bed and put his underwear underneath his pants and towards his privates. So he basically pushed him away, and then he realized, oh yeah, you're not into it. So what he did do was he touched his back and tried to give him a back massage and asked him how it felt. And he was like, yeah, it feels good. And he was like, just say yes. So he basically was saying yes to make it stop. But fast forward to present day, and this year, Jesse Lee Peterson tried to get him arrested and try to serve a restraining order against him, but it wasn't successful. The cops was like, listen here, we don't think you did anything illegal, so we just going to leave you alone. So we're not going to go forward with this. So what ends up happening is that church militants, Joseph Enders, asks people if Jesse will continue to sexually prey on young men. And they respond not only yes, but they believe that there's still current victims out there. And so Jesse basically has denounced all the things that he's being accused of, and he believes that they're all lies. So all the men are on code when it comes to Jesse. They're like, Jesse's a predator. So then he interviews former Bond House tenant Fabian Asensio. He's one of the men that commented under the upload that I did in December. And, he basically, I don't want to say stood up for me, but he basically, when people were coming at me, his followers, he defended what I said because he said that it was the truth, what I was reporting. And I always thanked him for that because Jesse Lee Peterson has the most nastiest supporters. They're racist, they're derogatory, and people were condemning me to hell. They were calling me Satan's daughter. His followers did that. But Mr. Asensio gave a statement and he said, Jesse Lee Peterson has basically collected money through the years and falsely did it. He lied about himself, and he has tried to shut people down who has basically questioned his activities. They wanted to know, was it the truth? He needs to be stopped and he needs to be shut down. The bond, the church, all of it needs to be removed. And so he's had hidden homosexual relationships. It's just now coming out, but that's been going on for years. So a man named Jim, I believe his name is Jim Valeno. He's a former donor and friend. He says, if you still support serial predator and homosexual Jesse Lee Peterson, you are going to pay a heavy price for that. And I said, you're right. You're absolutely right. Because so many of his followers are supporting him. So I guess they're going to go to hell. That's why I'm just saying that. But we go back to October 2020 to the Twitter scandal when Jesse had liked a gay OnlyFans post. So a caller calls on his radio show and says, Jesse, why do you have your Twitter page private? And he says, oh, so you must be a beta male because only a beta male would be interested in girl stuff because that's girl stuff. He was like, no, Jesse, you got caught liking an OnlyFans post and you privatized your whole page. Your post that you liked was a gay post. And they were engaging in gay sex acts. So Jesse got upset, called him a beta, and basically probably had Hakes to hang up the phone, and they probably talked about him really bad. So that ended the documentary. And I gotta say, for a 26-minute documentary, there was a lot of information and exposing about Jesse. I'm glad this was done. And I'm glad that the truth is coming out because Jesse has promoted racial lies about black people, okay? Calling us monkeys. He has called us monkeys, saying that we were basically better people when we were enslaved, slavery. Even goes as far as to say the KKK was not racist at all. They were just bad people. He has even gone on to get upset when black people condemn institutions like Jim Crow. He goes on to probably state that he grew up on a plantation that his family owns. He has gone on to talk about how police brutality is not real. It's just bad cops doing bad things, but many black people put themselves in those situations. They should not talk back. This man also condemns homosexuals. He condemns black lesbians. I have to say that because he says that a lot. He also condemns women rights movements and states that there's no such thing as sexual inequality. There's no such thing as that. There's no such thing as sexism. It's the women that are angry because they don't like men. And just a horrible person all around. Now, what I have to say, I have to be real with this. In closing, I feel really bad for the men that this happened to. No one should be a victim of sexual predatory behavior, whether it is heterosexual or homosexual. But we have to ask, why would you follow a man that promotes racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic behavior? There was something that you believed just like him that had you attracted to him. And you believed it because you agreed with him too. So this is why I feel bad for them, but I can't really give my whole heart out to what happened to them. Rooney, he agreed, he consented. Samuel, he basically was a victim of molestation. He was stoic. Actifian, he rejected. Francis was like, nah, but I'll let you rub my back just to stop you. The other one, the house manager, was like, it ain't never gonna happen. And Trayvon has disappeared. So, and he was the only black one. And I want to say, Jesse, I believe by the end of the year, Jesse's fan base is going to turn on him because even more people are going to come out. But I will say to the accusers, they do have to protect themselves because Jesse's fan base, they are radicals. They are alt-right, paleo-conservative radicals. If they was to see one of them out on the street, they might attack them. And Martin Francis, he can't afford another attack because the man really looks sick. He really does. And that's a concerning thing. And so he really needs to stay low for his health. And he's done a lot in exposing, which is a great thing. But he needs to just concentrate on working out and improving his health. The others continue to speak out, but I would just do it in the privacy of my home. And hey, do YouTube, do podcasting, get the message out because there are probably a whole lot of victims out there. I believe that he will have more accusers than Cosby, Russell Simmons, Harvey Weinstein, and some of the others that I can't name at the moment collectively added up. And I will say that this was a good documentary. It got to the point, and I think everybody should watch it. And with that being said, it's 40 minutes that I spoke. It's your girl, Miss Analytical. Thank you for listening to this review on Jesse Lee Peterson's exposed documentary, Amazing Disgrace. Please share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell. And if you haven't, please subscribe and please hit the notification bell to get uploads on my future posts. I don't think YouTube is going to monetize this content, so I'm going to post my Cash App, because YouTube is very much not monetizing anything that deals with essays, anything that deals with M, or anything that they think may speak out against homosexuality, which this is just talking about predators, sexual predators. So that's all. Have a wonderful day and enjoy the weather if you're in New York City.